Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and I've just come across an article. Well, it's not really an article, it's a new ruling, and it's talking about whether or not children are safe with both parents. Now, the family courts used to make the presumption that a child is better off with both parents. But now, because there's so much domestic abuse in the home, they're changing that ruling. And what they're saying now is that they're not going to allow the abuser access to the child or contact with the child. It's not. It doesn't say it as black and white as that, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of exceptions and a lot of criteria and case by case basis, that kind of thing. But the long and short of it does appear that they've suddenly discovered that having both parents is not necessarily in the best interest of the child, and the well-being of the child is at risk. And I'm not sure whether this means whether or not the perpetrator is in the home. We know that there are more male perpetrators than there are female perpetrators of domestic violence. So I'm not quite sure if the partner has to be living in the home, but the way I interpreted it, maybe by innuendo, I'm very kind of a skeptic. It seemed to me like what they were saying is that if the child is not safe in the home, the children will be removed. That was my interpretation. Just lost my page, so hold on one sec. Yeah, so before it shuts off again, it's got this screen timeout. I've got here, can you prove that you're a good enough parent to keep your children? It looks like there's going to be some kind of proof. I don't know how they're going to do it, but you're going to have to, who knows, maybe complete a questionnaire. Maybe it's going to be like the DWP, whether or not you're eligible for benefits. Maybe it's going to be something like that. Are you eligible to be a parent? Are you qualified to be a good parent and keep your children safe? I'm just saying. A new family court ruling hitting your partner could mean losing your children. Once again, that is my interpretation, my opinion of what I read. Somebody else read the same article. They got something different out of it. The article is about 6 pages long, so I can't read all of it. I'm just going to share with you some of the key aspects I feel that made me draw that conclusion. Okay, statistics show that there are more male perpetrators of domestic abuse than women. Fathers who are perpetrators tend to say that the female victim is trying to alienate them from their children, and the courts had often ruled in their favour, giving them supervised visitation rights if not living at home. The court have been found to protect the rights of abusive fathers over the safety and well-being of children. Children who witness domestic abuse are adversely emotionally impacted by it. Currently, under the Children Act 1989, courts in England and Wales are guided to work on the principle that children should have contact with both parents unless there is evidence that a parent could put the child at risk of harm. The government have found that this is no longer the case, and that children living in a home where there is domestic abuse is at risk of harm. The family courts will no longer work on this presumption that having contact with both parents is in the best interest of the child. In a landmark change that domestic abuse campaigners have said will save so many lives. The move has been heralded as groundbreaking by family lawyers and campaigners who have long argued that the pro-contact culture in the family courts places the rights of abusive fathers over the safety and well-being of children. Now, they are focusing on the fathers in this, but the perpetrator is whoever the perpetrator is, whatever gender that is. The government confirmed on Tuesday, the 21st of October, that it would repeal the presumption of parental involvement from the Act when parliamentary time allows. So, you see that? For me, presumption of parental involvement, that means they're repealing that, so the parents, if they don't feel as though they're qualified, they're not going to have any involvement with the child. That's just my opinion. There used to be the presumption that a child living with both parents would have better quality of life, but with the increase of domestic violence and children witnessing domestic violence and it having long-term implications, the government are now seeking to remove children from these situations in their interest, in the children's best interest. This could mean assessing or re-evaluating whether the abusive father should have contact or whether the children should be removed altogether. A report from the Domestic Abuse Commissioner's Office published earlier this month found in many cases parental contact, including unsupervised overnight contact, had been allowed even in cases where domestic abuse was present. And I need to say that the sentence I said before this was my words. That's not what I read in the text. Family court judges will no longer have to work from a premise that parental involvement is in the child's best interest, and instead will be directed to consider the evidence and assess a child's well-being on a case-by-case basis. So to me, when I'm thinking, I interpret this to mean that children may be taken away from parents if there is domestic abuse in the home, or anything that puts a child at risk. Because if you have previously, they'll no longer be working on the premise that parental involvement is in the child's best interest. In that sentence, they're not saying that the father's interest is in the father's involvement or the perpetrator's involvement is in the best interest. They're saying that parental involvement is in the child's best interest. So for me, that means that parental involvement could be taken away. Abusers can use children to retain control over partners. If you don't want me to see, you don't want the children to see me because you're trying to keep them away from me, or you're trying to make them feel I don't care about them, and they can use psychological blackmail on victims. However, the government want to ensure children are properly heard, protected and supported. And this will allow courts to make safer decisions. Children prefer to remain with parents even when there is domestic abuse. That was my thoughts, because some children, they just want to be with their parents, even though the parents are beating each other up. They still prefer to be with their parents. Is that in the best interest of the child? When the children are taken away and put in with strangers? We don't know. Maybe long term, if they're placed in homes that are loving and caring and stable, but we don't know that either. Government will ensure that the courts place the safety and well-being of children above all else. And that is in their eyes. That is their perception. It makes sense that all parents should have to prove that they're good enough parents and safe enough parents to have contact with the children. I don't know where that bit came from. I think it was one of the campaigners. What it means is that, what does it mean? They want to know what it means to be a good and safe parent. Contact will now be earned by behaviour and not assumed by law. For me, that's quite scary. Is this it? I just want to see who said that last bit. Oh, I don't know who said that last bit. But anyway, do your own research. Don't take my word for it. Get all the facts and don't get too worried about it. Just check it out. Okay? And that's all for now. Bye-bye.